Now, you fought Brock Lesnar twice, winning once and losing once. I'm sure you're looking forward to a rubber match. What can you do to overcome his sheer mass?
Well, that's something I've been working on with Mark Philippi. He's a strength coach here in Vegas. Some people might recognize the name. He did those strongman competitions, the world's strongest man, and he was a football coach, strength coach at UNLV for 16 years. So after that fight, that's just something you have to do when you see a loss. One thing's acknowledging that, I lost, and you can't make excuses. I had to sit there and go, wow, 40 pounds amongst skilled athletes matters. Because I'm so used to big guys in the gym, and I just trash them. But a big guy who's skilled as Lesnar is, especially with the wrestling, it's a whole different scenario. So I've basically been working on strength training, putting on size myself. Maybe I don't know if I'll ever be stronger than Brock Lesnar. He seems to have pretty good genetics in that category. I just have to close the gap so it's not so overwhelming.
Now, to that end, you added about 20 pounds for your last fight, a chokeout of Czech Congo last December. How did the extra size serve you, Frank? What were the pros and cons in the octagon?
Well, first of all, when I first walked in the gym, I was concerned about the scale. Well, if I put on size is what it means. And not so much now, because I realize it's more or less about, if I'm moving weights at a fast speed and I'm lifting heavy weights and moving them around, that's what I'm more concerned with, and the weights kind of become, my personal weight gain becomes an afterthought. So the one thing I've really noticed is just the ability to be anaerobically in shape. I think a lot of martial artists who are in good aerobic shape, we can sit there and hit pads or spar at a nice pace all day long. But the minute we go to do something extremely heavy or explosive, they can be fatiguing. And that's one thing with the training that I do at Philippines. A lot of it, he has the Atlas stones that we're picking up stones and running around with them. That's conditioned my body now that I can sit there and I'm not fearful of using my explosiveness now in the octagon, because I'm like, I can do it several times during a match. I don't have to worry about holding back and conserving myself, because I know if I explode, I'm going to get tired.
Talk about the animosity between you and Lesnar. How deep does it run? How real is it?
Well, I don't think Lesnar made it in pro wrestling because of his acting abilities. So I know from his point of view, he doesn't like me, and I can guarantee you, talk to anybody in my family, it's a legitimate hate. It's been very motivated on my part, where his very being bugs me, just because I see that, there's a lot of children out there that, they look to athletes and martial artists as role models, and it just makes me cringe. I sit there and go, man, I lost this guy the second time around, and now people are out there going, well, that's the way to be big, obnoxious, and angry. I'm like, no, man, that's not right. So it's almost kind of like a, just a viewpoint, anger we have against each other, where everything I stand for, he despises and dislikes, and I can tell you, I truly do not like him as a person whatsoever.
Now, he had surgery. He'll be back later this year. At what point do you think he and you get together again?
I'm hoping that, if all goes well. I mean, I got Shane Carwin March 27th, and that's a tough guy. So if I get past him, then I'm looking to hopefully fight him sometime this summer.
Talk about the Carwin fight. That's March 27th on pay-per-view for the UFC Interim Heavyweight Championship. On paper, that seems like a very interesting matchup.
Yeah, because he poses a lot of threats. A lot of people think I'm downplaying Lesnar by saying that Carwin's a better version. But it's easy. I explain it like this. Lesnar hasn't knocked anybody out in the octagon. No one's really worried about his stand-up. I mean, in our fight, the last fight, UFC 100, I was more than happy to stand up with him. He kept taking me down. So, his strength and his ground and pound obviously is, world-class. It's what has enabled him to be the champ. Carwin is, walks around 280 pounds. He's a Division II champion in wrestling. So equally, he's still a better wrestler than he's still a better wrestler than I am. And so he poses the same threats that Brock does as far as his wrestling ability, but Carwin's knocked out several people now. No one's made it past the first round with this guy. So that's when I say he's a better version, because it's like, well, I got to worry about his wrestling, but if I just sit there and concentrate on not getting taken down and ground and pound, and I fall asleep on his right hand, it could put me to sleep. He's a very heavy hitter. He in the fight with Gonzaga, he knocked him out with one shot, caught him on the chin, and Gonzaga was asleep in the cage.
We're talking to UFC's Frank Mir here on 105.9 The X. Frank, you have a background in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Karate, and boxing. Which of these disciplines do you think serves you the best?
I think they all have their different points that make it better. I think that, a lot of my stance and a lot of my striking is more boxing orientated on my feet, but Muay Thai adds into the elbows and knees and shins and trying to use different weapons. where boxing's limited there. You know, you only use your hands. And jiu-jitsu obviously is one of my, you know, greatest strengths, just because once you hit the ground, and, you know, a guy can have a good chin, but no one has a good elbow. You know, you don't say, oh, the guy can't be armbarred. No, if you get caught in armbar, your arm's going to break. If I catch you in a choke, you're going to go to sleep. And then the karate I still use a lot, too, just because it's very much more open-minded. I think sometimes people sit there and they go, well, no, wait a minute, you know, you can't switch stance, or you can't do this. It's fundamentally wrong. I'm like, well, no, there's certain principles you got to follow, but after that, just achieve the objective. Where, you know, karate kind of has a more of a approaching the problem kind of aspect to it, because it's more of a lifestyle martial arts than just a sport for, say, just being in a combat. So, I mean, I don't think I'd be who I was with anything taken away.
Frank, I've read that you were initially hesitant to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, even after seeing Royce Gracie dominate the early UFC cards. Talk about that a bit.
Well, I think that just a lot of times I fell into the same trap that a lot of other people fell into, which is like, you know, even though you're seeing it, it's kind of a denial, especially since I've been training martial arts, stand-up versions, since I was a little kid. My dad owned a karate school. And so I think that, you know, sometimes acknowledging things means you have to realize that maybe what you've dedicated your life to for the last couple of years is incomplete. And most people don't want to do that. That's why people are so zealously defending their religion, their upbringing. You know, no, I have it the right way, because no one wants to admit that they've dedicated their life to something that maybe not be the most optimal journey. And so, you know, but I first went in the gym when I was 19 or 20 to start jiu-jitsu, and there was a guy who weighed 145 pounds, who was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and you know, at the time I was still 230. I'm thinking, no way. I got choked out from every way you can imagine. The guy could have been talking to me and telling me what he wanted to do, and I couldn't stop him. And that's when it finally sunk in, you know.
You were once the head bouncer at the Spearmint Rhino strip club in Las Vegas. Not quite as tough as the Octagon, I bet.
No. The guys that are going to the, you know, that's one thing when people tell me, oh, man, I've had like 50 bar fights. I'm undefeated. I'm like, really? My wife could be undefeated in 50 bar fights. Typically, most guys here aren't in shape. They can't fight for more than 15 seconds. And I've seen men who think they know how to fight. You know, the first thing they do is they grab T-shirts, they lower their head and start, it looks like a hockey fight. Give me a break, man. I think people, you know, they get a couple of drinks. And another thing is, too, is you have that to where they couldn't fight to begin with, and now they're drunk. So, yeah, fighting in an octagon against a guy who's a trained athlete, who's dangerous, who's prepared to do battle, a little bit more intimidating than a guy who's just, you know, got spurned by some dancer and he's angry and he's been drinking a bunch of drinks and you know, couldn't, you know, jog a mile, let alone fight for more than 5 seconds. You know, he gets gassed just by getting mad.
I think you're describing your fight against Tank Abbott, aren't you?
Yeah, but at least Tank Abbott had the fact he could hit hard.
Frank, is there anything like the rush of the Octagon? That buzz has to be unbelievable.
Yeah, there's no sensation like it. I mean, obviously, I mean, we watch movies like Gladiator and Troy, and they sit there and you see a guy going into a battle, and they pan out to the screen, and I think people can get a feeling for what it's like, and just imagine that. That's only a small percentage of the sensation that's going through a fighter, because we actually are living that. You know, it's actually like, you know, a movie come to life. I'm walking out to battle against a tough warrior, and you have thousands of fans sitting there watching you, you know, in the middle of an octagon. It's very, it's a rush. You know, it's hard to describe it in any other aspect of my life. I mean, I've been into motorcycles, and, you know, I like to go shooting, and, you know, there's different sports I'm into that are, you know, a little bit more extreme, and none of them match up to what it's like to walk out to that octagon.
What makes you so popular, Frank? I don't think it's an exaggeration to say your fan base ranks among MMA's biggest.
I'd like to think that just for the reason that I'm pretty candid in when I speak about things. A lot of individuals are so worried about being politically correct. And, you know, a lot of fighters, you know, when we're all together, I hear them, you know, oh, don't say that because, you know, the fans won't like you. I'm like, you know what, dude? I've realized a long time ago you're going to have fans that love you and fans that hate you. And I'd rather go ahead and say what's on my mind than to sit there and come up with some PC, you know, oh, well, you know, the guy's a great fighter and I have a lot of respect for him. And if I don't mean it, then why is it even coming out of my mouth? Because who's interested in hearing that? You say the same cookie-cutter responses. Oh, who do you want to fight next? Well, whoever the UFC deems me, I just will fight anybody. I'm like, man, I've heard that 1,000 times. I want to fight Lesnar. I hate who he is as a person. I want to break his neck in the ring. I want him to be the first person that dies due to octagon-related injuries. That's what's going through my mind.
Frank, I'm not sure you can follow that statement. You're a lot of fun to watch. Thank you for taking the time to join us, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you so much.
That's Frank Mir from the Ultimate Fighting Championships. Don't forget, octagon-related injuries. Love that. Frank Mir versus Shane Carwin, March 27th on pay-per-view. I'm Mark Madden, 1059 The X.